This is 5 on your side at 5. Focused on you.
We start with developing news tonight out of the Middle East. The U.S. is launching airstrikes in Iraq and Syria in retaliation for an attack that killed 3 U.S. troops. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Kelly Jackson.
And I'm Ann Allred. We just learned about these attacks 2 hours ago. The U.S. says it hit more than 85 targets in Iraq and Syria and used B-1 bomber planes. It's the start of what could be a series of U.S. strikes on Iran-backed militants. The U.S. is targeting the group that claimed responsibility for a drone attack in Jordan. That attack killed 3 soldiers and injured dozens of others. Officials say the drone may have been mistaken for an American one. Earlier this week, the Biden administration warned it would retaliate. The administration's trying to stop more attacks in the future while avoiding something even bigger.
So this is a dangerous moment in the Middle East. We will continue to work to avoid a wider conflict in the region. But we will take all necessary actions to defend the United States, our interests, and our people.
I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for.
The U.S. says its retaliation strikes could last for several weeks. It's focusing mostly on areas that store weapons or are used as training facilities.
News of the strikes came soon after a dignified transfer of those American soldiers who died. There's Sergeant William Rivers, Sergeant Kennedy Sanders, and Sergeant Brianna Moffitt. Sanders and Moffitt were posthumously promoted to the sergeants. They were all from Georgia, and today they were brought back to the U.S. at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. President Biden and the First Lady were there, and they also met with the soldiers' families. We will continue following the latest on the conflict in the Middle East. You can watch more tonight on Nightly News, and we'll also have updates in our newscast on KSDK.com and the 5 on Your Side app. The co-owner of Bar PM appeared in court today. He is defending himself against misdemeanor charges stemming from an incident when a police SUV crashed into their business.
Tonight, the police chief is facing fresh criticism for how he described the public outcry after that incident. Our political editor, Mark Maxwell, is here with new calls for greater scrutiny of officers involved in car wrecks. Mark.
Ann and Kelly, police faced heavy criticism initially for how much information they shared with the public and how much information they collected in the aftermath of that SUV crash into the front of Bar PM. But Chief Tracy only yesterday answered the second half of those questions. More than 7 weeks after a police SUV crashed into Bar PM,
it wasn't intentional. It was an accident.
Chief Robert Tracy answered questions about what his officers investigated in the aftermath and what they didn't.
These officers, if this accident happened down the street and didn't happen at an LGBTQIA plus bar, which drew some attention because there was an arrest afterwards, no one would be calling for a toxicology test or a drug test or an alcohol test on our officers.
As a black gay man, I find that a little offensive.
Alderman Rasheen Aldridge called the chief's remarks insensitive and called for him to apologize, and said he and other members of the board are considering ways to require officers involved in wrecks to undergo sobriety tests. The responding officers, who might have conducted those tests, were otherwise preoccupied arresting bar owner Chad Morris.
Anytime a city-owned vehicle or a city employee is involved in a vehicle accident, they should be drug tested and sobriety checked. It happens in any other workplace.
It's a city policy and it's police department policy.
Tracy claimed the rights that protect civilians from criminal prosecution also shield officers on the job, with one key caveat.
And I have to follow policy. Why would I change policy and make an exception here? These officers have due process. And the officers on the scene and the supervisors, if they felt that there was a problem or they were under the influence, they have the authority then to call for a sobriety test under reasonable suspicion. And I would back them if they did that.
He wasn't wearing a badge that night, but at least one person on scene did have reasonable suspicion.
I think that people would care. If a police officer or a city vehicle drove into their house, I believe they would care. Yeah. I just think it should be common practice.
We're told several members of the Board of Aldermen are now looking at ways to adopt an ordinance and require officers to undergo sobriety tests anytime they might crash a city-owned vehicle.
A St. Louis County man has been charged with murder after telling police that he beat his wife to death with a hammer.
This all happened Thursday morning at the couple's home on Lee Shore Drive in South St. Louis County. Justina Coronel is here, and you have more details on this case, Justina.
Well, police charged 62-year-old Robert Leverins for the murder of his wife, 62-year-old Kathleen Leverins. Now, we're told before 10 yesterday morning, the man called police and told them that he tried to murder his wife. And then he explained to the operator that He strangled her and then hit her with a hammer several times. When police arrived to the home, they arrested him and found the victim in their bedroom. She had several injuries to the head and was dead at the scene. Now, a neighbor told me Kathleen lived there for more than 30 years and she has 2 sons, and she was very nice. Now, the Diamond Diva Empowerment Foundation works with victims of domestic violence, and this week they hosted a town hall with Congresswoman Cori Bush to discuss the increase in domestic violence cases.
The importance of us even coming onto that town hall was to make sure that individuals know that if they are in a dangerous situation, that there definitely is help out here. And if we can come together a little bit more to see what's going on, address what's going on, provide resources for those individuals, we can possibly curb this epidemic that we are facing here in St. Louis.
The suspect is being held on $1 million cash-only bond. We're told right now he's in the hospital because he injured himself after the alleged crime. Now, if you'd like to reach out to Diamond Diva Foundation, you can call 314-328-4348.
Tonight, the Webster Groves School District has decided it will not move forward with an early retirement incentive plan for its teachers.
The idea was first presented during a school board meeting just a week ago. 5 on your side's Diamond Palmer joins us with this afternoon's decision.
Well, Kelly and Ann, the idea of the incentive plan was brought up so the district could recoup millions in loss of revenue because of the pandemic. Today, the school district superintendent, John Simpson, decided not to approve this plan. Simpson sent out an email to staff just hours before today's special meeting saying he was apprehensive. He said it would be a mistake to move forward on a retirement incentive plan this late into the school year. In fact, federal law states if school districts do a buyout plan, they have to give teachers 45 days to accept the plan and then another 7 days after to revoke their acceptance, which would mean the district wouldn't know how many employees would take the offer until the beginning of April. The district says many teachers accept contracts for the next year in March.
At the end of the day, didn't feel that it would be in the best interest of the district to move forward. And really the reason for that is because it becomes harder and harder to hire teachers and staff these days. There are fewer people going into the profession. And you always want to get out as soon as you can when you're hiring people.
The superintendent says they are willing to discuss a possible retirement incentive plan in the next school year as they look to continue to look for ways to decrease their loss of revenue.
It's been days since a popular St. Louis area grocer said it was putting stricter limits on self-checkout. Meanwhile, another one says there are no limits. We reached out to Deerbergs, who says customers can take as many items as they want through its self-checkout. This has been the policy since 2001. The company says it gives customers more options. Earlier this week, Schnucks announced it was limiting self-checkout to 10 items, in part because of theft.
Coming up, the Georgia district attorney who helped indict former President Trump is now facing allegations herself.
New problems surround the WWE's founder, the latest on his sex trafficking allegations. Is Texas sending tanks to the Mexico border? We verify.
And temperatures staying warm so far, but how does it compare to last February? It was warm recently, but how warm did it get today and what we can expect over the next few days?